Once upon a time, there was a young man who had a brief conversation with the Ozman. That's me. And it was after the school meeting last Wednesday. He failed to identify himself, but I have become so accustomed to anonymity that I didn't even feel the need to know his name. Wherever this young man was from, he had the stench of academia. After he was introduced to me by someone that knew who I was, he began by asking me some general questions about who I was and how I felt about journalism, to which I responded that I was nobody and I avoided talking about journalism in a general sense. He identified me as an activated citizen. The thought that crossed my mind was, aren't we all? He then asked to condense my response to his following question down to 2 sentences. Can you believe that? What is better public servant trying to accomplish? I was amused in finding myself back in a classroom with a supposed authority standing before me as I sat. I amused myself and responded as promptly as I could to deliver information with as much transparency and analysis so as to better help the voter and taxpayer decide on a candidate, so as to give the power back to the sovereign, I says. Something about his question about journalism revealed to me that this young man leaned heavily to the political left. Perhaps it was how he loaded the question to argue over what is considered to be fake news. In any case, it was a little too far to the left. This was typical of young men that believe religiously the teachings of their liberal professors. Those are some powerful words, he said to me, no doubt making reference to returning the power back to the sovereign, which is after all the voter, the taxpayer, the landowner. I might have been offended by the suggestion his tone made. You see, he almost acted surprised that the person standing before him was capable of saying such a thing, but I doubt that the young man could find anything that could truly offend me. I know I shouldn't be playing games with petty minds that may easily possess the mental capacity to regurgitate information and remember vast amounts of other people's thoughts without ever having pieced together their own. The temptation was too much. I had already been judged, and almost as if to answer my need for proof, he asked one more question. It was supposed to be the question that was beyond my education. It was supposed to shock me into some dumbfounded state of being perplexed. It was the question that he had studied and rehearsed, and it didn't matter who answered it, he would have a response to just about anything that comes out of a person's mouth. It was the question that he would use to humble me into some form of mental submission. In that one moment, imagine all of his professors aligned behind him, awaiting the wrath of academia to be unleashed upon this peasant simpleton daring to speak of power and sovereign. I was supposed to juxtapose populists and elitist methods. His voice trembled a bit as he spoke the word, and I wondered if I had made an expression that sent fear or doubt through his spine or lack thereof. I would first entertain the question, then his fear. I explained that I cannot ignore that at the foundation of my thought process is objectivism, and as a result I see through an objective paradigm. That being said, I explained that I cared not how something was accomplished, whether by appealing to the masses and employing the democratic vote, or whether it was chosen by the elite, so long as what they are doing benefits the voter and the taxpayer. I invited him to an interview where I would have enjoyed to carry on our conversation and share it, but he was in a bit of a hurry to excuse himself shortly after he received my response. Perhaps he was not accustomed to being challenged, or he simply did not wish to defend his convictions. In either case, he left me with the same joy that I get from capturing a fly with my hand, the only difference being that a fly is much harder to catch. Populists and elitists, bourgeoisie and proletariats, the poor, the middle class, and the rich, however you want to talk about it, it all boils down to bullshit. Sure, some people throughout history coined a few terms and sold their product to idiots that later caused mass genocide. Next, you'll be asking me if I think it is a part of natural selection and if those people all deserve to die. Eventually, I get sick of listening to an elitist that I begin to draw up examples that have been like a wrench in the cogs of the machine machine in their mind that keeps spewing out the same old crap. See, the majority of the people that speak in these terms are the product of being raised by elitists to be elitists and see the world through the eyes of elitists. I wonder where this person would classify Pino Lopez, a municipal judge that made an honest salary of around $50,000 a year, but somehow managed to produce houses that were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in multiple cities, numerous luxury vehicles throughout the years, and maybe he managed to get some of his kids an Ivy League education, whatever that is worth these days. Given that the man has already been caught and is looking to pay for his crimes, do I see him as the poor that stole from the population? Do I see him as the working class that stole from the population? Do I see him as the elite that stole from the population? Does it even matter? The man is a rat that still has his grubby little hands on RGC CISD to the extent that he stole the profits from the sale of concessions from the pockets of the band boosters. Explain to me, you spineless, timid, spoon-fed neo-Marxist beta male, in 2 sentences or less, where in your model does this man fit? The parents of kids in band for years have donated the concession ingredients that make the concession snacks that sell for about $5 to $6 for a drink, some Frito pie, and a hot dog. Compare that to the measly dollar that the sale of a slice of pizza produces for the band, allowing the entity that is Pino's Pizza to sell their pizza. 100 meals produced from $500 to $600 with the old way, while Pino's Pizza produces $100 for the band. Explain to me how this is for the kids and not the pockets of the Lopez family. He is the very capitalistic pig you have come to detest, but only worse. The origin of his legacy has been tainted with acts of corruption. What kind of a man continues to display the level of apathy towards a sick spouse that allows him to watch as she struggles with cancer and continues to carry the burden of swaying the board where he pleases?
Mr. President, I have a motion on the table.
I have a question.
We have a motion by Mr. Villarreal, second by Mr. Ramirez. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, raise your left hand.
Am I to believe that the message Letty Lopez sent by not voting initially with either side on how much of a raise to give teachers was anything other than pay attention, RGC CISD? I can sway the vote in any direction I want. Was it her conscience that made her hesitate as she held a desire to increase the raise that was being offered by the faction that was opposing her husband? Or was Pino having a little trouble getting Kids' Choice to agree on a few other conditions of their relationship, and he needed Letty to remind them that things could go in a totally different direction? At what point will this man allow her to rest and heal and live a life without the stress associated with being a member of the school board? In what social model is a common criminal considered the elite fit to govern the population? Given that Gocha was allowed to have an ad on the school scoreboard and Pino's Pizza allowed to sell pizza, thereby taking the profits of the concession that once belonged to the band in their entirety, and that Letty Lopez has been the means by which these things have happened. Is it even Letty Lopez making these decisions at this point? Is she deciding to endure the stress, and for what? To allow the bidding of the man of her choosing? Are we to accept that she is elite by virtue of vote, and by that she can choose no wrong? Perhaps it is time someone says it, if for nothing more, for compassion. Take a break from this madness, Letty. Set aside the petty lust for money born in the heart of a man that is surrounded by weak and money-hungry people. Put an end to the false pretense that you are somehow championing a cause for the school. You have failed the employees by allowing them to get short-changed in their salaries. You have failed the children by allowing them to steal from their very pockets, their very mouths. You have cradled in your bosom the very thing that gives sustenance to the education of children, and you have allowed it to get corrupted. There is no excuse for what you have done. There is no excuse to allow it to continue. What is exactly that your vote championed on that day? The difference would have been to the school $1.5 to $2 million, an amount that was so willingly and easily paid to a select group of lawyers that did little to educate the children. It would have made a huge difference in the lives of the people that live off of educating children. I understand that desperate times call for desperate measures. Only weak people concern themselves with sustaining a lifestyle far beyond their means at the expense of children. You are neither the poor nor the working class, nor the elite. You are the problem. I wonder where my social pseudo-intellectual would classify Dr. B. The good doc seemed to have a hard time understanding how it is that the fund balance dropped from 34 million to 24 million on her watch. Of course, she tried to pass the buck over to Team Hope, as she has tried to do with anything and everything that she deems negative. Of what use is a school board member that does not understand how a budget works or what her role is? Of course, she opens her mouth and words fly out as fast as she can deliver misleading comments or a question that attempts to direct the dialogue in a more favorable direction. But when she asks a question and the answer comes back to her from her own people, proving that it was in fact her fault because she just spent $7 million and gave no thought whatsoever in the absurdity in expecting to produce a savings over a larger span of time than the equipment was expected to function. She sat on millions of dollars from lawsuits and failed to use the money for what it was for. She boasted a fund balance that was inflated by money received from defects cases. She spent money frivolously on energy efficiency, turf, swimming pools, Bernice Garza, tango, but argues to prevent an increase in salary. She presumes to be conservative, concerning herself with the deficit when the money is to be used to reward educators and employees. She allows for paying lawyers $500,000 and then assumes that it was due to the poor construction of the schools, to which Baltazar explains that it wasn't.
Seen it, but they have an additional 141,000.
How much?
114,000.
$114,000
Yes,
additional to the 29,000?
Yes, sir. Well, 29 might be included, but I just got that, so.
And we don't have money for raises. Wow.
I mean, and those are bills coming back from last year, November,
100
December.
What again, so I can write it down, sir?
114. I'll forward you the email, sir.
Okay, we're not going to approve it tonight, right, or not?
No, sir, because the question was how many more bills are outstanding, and I want to be transparent. The ones that I know of, they're one that to me, that's a substantial bill.
Could you do me a favor, Mr. Salazar?
Yes.
Can you give me a totality of how much we paid this individual? And at your own pace. I'm not asking you for tonight.
I will tell you, since we're on the item of attorney's fees, that the district last year, up until June, paid $583,000 in attorney's fees. And that does not include this 114 and the other 10,000 that are on today's agenda. So having said that, you're close to $707,000 in attorney's fees.
So you're going to be a bargain, Mr. Salazar, right?
My goal, Mr. Villarreal, is to lower the legal fees and to have control over all the legal fees. What has happened in the last year, and I've requested the last 3 years of legal, and what has happened is that there's so many attorneys that are coming in that there's no one to control. So my goal is to control them, and I have substituted in over 10 cases from June to today.
Can you tell me the amount for last year again, sir? Or how did you say?
The ones that were already paid,
Yeah.
583,000.
$583,000.
And I'll forward you the email, sir, so you'll
And
have
that
it.
was for what year, sir? What?
That was for 2018-19, which was the last year.
I'm sorry,
And-
but I have a question. Can I get some clarification?
Yes,
Multi-purpose center was a fire.
that's correct.
We had insurance that was paid for.
That's correct.
So a lot of these fees are subject to the fact that we did not have insurance coverage due to the fact that it was a bankruptcy.
That's correct.
So out of our control as to the legal fees required to work with that.
That's correct.
Is it also true that the majority of those $500,000 in fees happen to be due to the issues related to the poor construction of our schools previously?
No, ma'am, not the 580. No, that's, the 580,000 are just, those do not include that.
They don't include any of the
No, ma'am.
litigation that have anything to do with the schools?
She asks how RGC-CISD got to the point it was at with broken AC units, only to discover that it was she that was a part of the majority of board members that chose to allow the problem to continue. It is what she championed. Is Dr. B the elite, fit to govern the poor masses, the mob, the peasants? Rather than reward the educators, she instead argues the raise is fair and just when compared to selective districts. The reality is she chose to pay less in wages. What is she hoarding this money for? Whatever it is, I am sure it will be Bacho's fault.
I'm for raises, but as a businessman, you cannot count on future sales.
Today I thought I'd discuss small business sales forecasting. Now,
Is Eleazar Velasquez the elite businessman fit to govern the peasants? He says that as a businessman, we can't count on future sales, except that there is such a thing as forecasting future sales, and it is a necessary component of making projections. How arrogant must a person be to presume that his choice of not employing a practice makes the practice irrelevant to everyone around him? What is next? Increases in salaries only add to deficits, so we must avoid them at all costs? I am a businessman. I know best. Let's hire uncertified rookie teachers in droves and expect them to accomplish what experienced teachers have trouble doing, because it will allow us access to more money that we can funnel into our pockets via vendors, including lawyers, because we are businessmen. Because we are smart businessmen that do not make money sitting in as school board members. Give me a break. You're not a businessman. You're a self-proclaimed businessman arguing against an insignificant increase in wages when compared to the frivolous spending that you allowed in energy efficiency alone. Where was your business sense when you voted for that genius idea? Businessman was the person that sold you on the idea that you could sit on the board, profit him and the children all at the same time. Shady as the business may be, it is business nonetheless. Of course, no one on Team Hope is elite enough for my neo-Marxist, pizza-eating, salary-denying, Dr. B-loving scholar.
I just think it's funny because now, a couple of weeks ago, the amounts were significantly lower, and now particular members of this board are making it seem like the whole time they had the same amount of information in their mind, and yet there was different numbers a couple weeks ago, and now they're different.
And I'm
so when
gonna
you go to
be-
the schools,
and I am
didn't
gonna be
interrupt-
very
I didn't
honest.
interrupt anybody when y'all were speaking. I actually kept quiet the whole time.
And I am going to be very honest. You
I'm
know
just saying,
that
when you go
in
to the
all
test,
prior
30%.
workshops, I had always recommend to stay within the 30% because I know how much the district had been hurting. And even if I don't get a raise, I'm going to be happy as long as we have a stable district economically
Not
wise
everybody feels the
and
same
with
way.
the scores.
I'm sorry, not everybody feels
And
Far be it for Eddie to get a word in to the people that voted for him without Robles rudely interrupting him and doing everything she can to talk over him until he is silenced. Where in the Communist Manifesto or the Texas Open Meetings Act is it written that the CFO has the right to elevate the volume of her voice until the elected board member is forced out of decency to stop talking? The voters don't care about what you have to say at that point, Robles. The voters did, however, vote for Eddie. So where does Eddie fit in the model? He is certainly not the elite. Am I led to believe that Robles is the elite silencing a peasant that sits on the same table as other elected elites? Let us agree that there exists a division, but it has nothing to do with elites and common folk. Instead, realize that the division is between people that choose to reward employees in a greater amount than the others. The division is between people that have allowed the spending of money to be done in a frivolous manner, and there are the people that try to prevent it from happening. There are people that broke the law and are under indictment, and there are people that are not. There are people that support paying Bernice Garza $50,000 a year and give her a raise without ever having to show up for a day of work, and there are people that do not. Understand that at one point Baltazar Salzar sat there in that seat and tried to silence Bacho, and he failed at it. Eventually, we found out what was going on. But on that meeting, it almost appeared as even Baltazar understood that the future of his actions were going to cost him an opportunity to attempt to save RGCCISD money by consolidating the work of the lawyers down through his firm. This is an opportunity that it appears as though Bacho has accepted, and it is almost as if Bacho is challenging him to keep his word. Humble people seldom classify people as being beneath them. They only see smarter people, stronger people, better people. Elitists only see everyone else beneath them. The reality is, my little spoon-fed scholar, that at some point you will have to reside outside of the bubble you live in, and you will have to fend for yourself and defend what you have. It is at that point that you will realize that the voter has the power to elevate humble people to a station seen as being elite, but only in the eyes of fools. The reality is, all of these people, with the exception of Pino Lopez, are public servants. The voter elevated their status to serve the public. The voter has the power to revoke the servant's authority and power of representation. This is America. This is Texas. Like it or not, the voter is the sovereign.